Hi, I'm Jonathan Hartog. I'm one of the co-founders of Biolite. And Biolite, it really aims to help families around the world meet their domestic needs with reduced impacts on their own health and the health of the environment. So this is a shot of a typical kitchen in India where there's an open fire and they're burning solid biomass to serve their cooking needs. This is a practice that's been in place for thousands of years, and people have adhered to it. And 3 billion people around the world use this practice to sustain themselves for cooking. And the implications are pretty significant. There are extremely high rates of childhood pneumonia and pulmonary disease as a result of these open fires inside the home. And so our aim is to help them burn more efficiently and more cleanly. There are a number of stoves out there that burn solid biomass as well. They fall into two categories: passive stoves and fan stoves. However, while they improve the emissions performance of stoves, they aren't that widely demanded because there's really not that much differentiation from just a three-stone fire. But at the same time, there's also a tremendous amount of demand in these communities for things like cell phones and LED lights. And so in places like India, they've started up over 100 million recent cell phone subscriptions in the past few years. And so there's a huge demand there and a need that hasn't really been met on the charging side. So our stove takes the energy from the fire, and a portion of that energy that's wasted heat is converted into electricity. We run a fan with that electricity and jet air into the flame and make it burn more efficiently, and then provide a portion of that electricity for charging for cell phones, lights, and other devices that these communities are demanding. So the particulate matter and carbon monoxide reductions are pretty significant, about 90% on both accounts, and it burns only about half as much fuel as a traditional three-stone fire. And this is about on par with other state-of-the-art clean-burning stoves, but what's unique about it is it also offsets their electrical charging needs, so it's much more broadly demanded. So what I'll do is I'll share a few things that we've learned in the field since winning the prize and having the opportunity to go out and put this theory to test. So we've observed that it's mainly the women and the children that are doing the cooking. They're the ones that are bearing most of the cost of these emissions and are suffering the health consequences. But it's the men that really make the purchase decisions in many of these families. And so engaging them in cooking and just what it means to have a good functional stove has been really meaningful for the marketability and ultimately the adoption of the product. We've also observed that fuel savings is incredibly meaningful. So there are two pieces to this. One is an economic piece. For families that purchase their fuel wood, it can result in a pretty significant savings for them. But families also spend a tremendous amount of time just searching for this wood week in and week out. Many of the ones that we work with spend about 20 hours per week just looking for fuel to support their cooking. One thing that we learned was that it wasn't so much the health implications that these families were interested in. Those are more long-term. What they really appreciated was a clean house and clean pots and pans. It's a really short-term benefit that we hadn't really appreciated prior to getting out in the field, but just by reducing the amount of scrubbing that's necessary was really something that they responded to. And we also found that it was important to differentiate our stove from everything else that was out there. So the way that the stove body is designed and the way that the flame is presented is really critical, particularly in communities that see the flame as something sacred, and that's really the most important part of the stove. We also saw that it was used in ways that we hadn't anticipated. So in some communities, like this shot in Uganda, they cook very thick meals that require stirring, and we'll use things like rebar to hold the pot down on the stove. And so there were certain things that we hadn't designed for initially, but we had to adapt to in order to make it viable. And one of the things that's really helped us out is having partners on the ground that can bring us into these communities and help us really engage with them and get an understanding of their needs. This is a group in India. It's called Saki Retail. They're selling LED lights and other water purifiers and enabling technologies, and we're working with them on building up our initial distribution network. So prior to the prize, back in 2011, we'd only built a handful of stoves and made it out into the field in 3 different sites. And it was a pretty small team, but the prize helped us get out into more communities. We built, off the bat, we built 100 additional prototypes, and were able to engage in longer-term programs. And the design has evolved over the past 3 years. So the stoves on the left here are where we started. We won the prize at about the second one with the Apple logo on it. And you can see that we were experimenting with the size, the form factor, all in response to the engagement that we had with these communities. And now we're towards the one on the right there and are in position to build 10,000 units over the next year. So we'll be working in 3 communities, one in Ghana in partnership with Columbia University, where we're studying the long-term health impacts of adoption of these stoves, so principally the health of children. We're also in Uganda working with groups called Impact Carbon to look at the potential for carbon financing, and in India for marketing and distribution channel opportunities. To support our activities now, we're actually selling the same technology for the camping market in Western Europe and the US. So we've built 150,000 of these stoves. We've learned a lot about manufacturing and quality control, and it's given us the basis for taking the technology and being able to confidently install it in these homes in India. So I am really glad to be back here at St. Andrews. This is the third time that I've been here. It makes me look back on my own college experience, where I was able to participate in a program that took me abroad. I was in Nicaragua for a couple weeks working on a farm, and it really exposed me to the broad needs in these types of communities and inspired me to get involved beyond my studies. Along the way, on this project, the road twisted and turned. We made a lot of mistakes, but the really critical thing was learning from all of them. So if you get involved in any projects that are like these, just expect to see failures. That's just part of the process. The key thing is to learn from them. And for me, another critical piece was learning to really work well as a team. This really wouldn't have happened with a single person. It wasn't a single idea or a single discipline that supported it. It was a combination of skill sets that were brought together. So working together is again, something that's absolutely critical for a project like this. Thanks.